Before the flood, before the waters rose, before the world was broken, there was another Earth. Not the one we know, not the one drawn on our maps, but a world older, stranger, and possibly far more advanced than we imagine. What if the flood was not just a story? What if it was the end of something real? For thousands of years, civilizations across the planet have told the same story. A great flood, a world destroyed, a reset of humanity. From Mesopotamia to South America, from ancient China to the oral traditions of native tribes, the memory is everywhere. But here is the real question. What existed before the waters came? The book of Genesis describes a world filled with violence and corruption. Ancient texts speak of giants, the Nephilim. Other traditions describe beings who came from the sky. Were these just metaphors or fragments of a lost memory? Modern geology confirms that Earth has experienced massive cataclysms. Ice cores show abrupt climate shifts. Sediment layers reveal sudden flooding events. Entire coastlines disappeared as sea levels rose over 400 feet at the end of the last ice age. But mainstream history tells us something simple. It says early humans were primitive, hunters, gatherers, living in small tribes, struggling to survive. And yet, we keep finding things that don't fit. Massive stone structures built with impossible precision. Blocks weighing hundreds of tons moved without modern machinery. Cities buried under layers of mud and sediment. Sites like Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey date back over 11,000 years. That is older than the pyramids, older than Stonehenge, older than what we are told civilization should even be capable of. Who built it, and why? At Pumapunku in Bolivia, stones are cut with angles so precise they look machine-made. At Yonaguni Monument off the coast of Japan, massive underwater structures challenge the idea that sea levels were always as they are today. If sea levels were once lower and then rose rapidly, how many cities now lie beneath the ocean? What if entire civilizations were swallowed? We assume progress is linear, primitive to advanced, stone to bronze, bronze to iron. But what if that is not how history works? What if civilizations rise, reach extraordinary heights, and then collapse completely, leaving almost nothing behind? Imagine a world before the flood. A stable climate, fertile land stretching across regions that are now deserts, vast river systems feeding early cities, coastlines hundreds of miles further out than today. Antarctica without ice, the Sahara green and alive, massive forests where today we see only sand. Maps like the Piri Reis map show Antarctica without ice cover, centuries before it was officially discovered. How could they know? Some researchers propose that before the flood, Earth's climate was radically different. Some even suggest that a global catastrophe, possibly a comet impact or rapid ice melt, triggered massive flooding events around 10,000 to 12,000 years ago. This timeline aligns almost perfectly with global flood myths. Coincidence or collective memory? In Mesopotamia, the Epic of Gilgamesh describes a man warned by the gods of a coming flood. In the Hebrew Bible, Noah builds an ark. In Hindu tradition, Manu is warned by a divine being to prepare for rising waters. In Mesoamerica, the Maya speak of previous worlds destroyed before ours. Different cultures, different continents, same story. Why? Because something happened, something so devastating that humanity never forgot. But here is where it becomes more unsettling. Some ancient traditions describe the world before the flood as technologically or spiritually advanced. They speak of giants, of knowledge passed down from heavenly beings, of structures aligned with the stars. At Great Pyramid of Giza, mathematical constants appear embedded in its dimensions. At Baalbek, stones weighing over 1,000 tons were lifted and placed with precision we still struggle to explain. These are not small tribal constructions. These are megalithic achievements, and many of them show signs of water erosion, erosion that suggests heavy rainfall in regions that are now arid.
Too fast.
Was the flood localized,
Get to the high
or was
ground,
it global?
quickly!
Geologists debate this intensely. Some argue for regional flooding. Others acknowledge rapid sea level rise at the end of the Younger Dryas period, a mysterious climatic event around 12,800 years ago. During this period, temperatures suddenly dropped, then rapidly rose again. Massive meltwater pulses entered the oceans. Entire landscapes vanished. If a civilization had flourished along ancient coastlines, it would now be gone, buried beneath hundreds of feet of water. We are so confident in our timeline, so certain that civilization began around 4000 BCE. But what if we are missing thousands of years? What if the flood was not the beginning of civilization, but the end of one? And what if the survivors, scattered, traumatized, rebuilding from memory, became the founders of the ancient civilizations we study today? Egypt, Sumer, the Indus Valley, not the first, but the second. And this is where the real mystery begins. Because if there was a world before the flood, who were they? What did they know? And why does every culture remember them as greater than themselves? In the next part, we will go deeper into the giants, into the lost knowledge, and into the possibility that humanity is not at the peak of history, but standing on the ruins of something far older.
If there was a world before the flood, then the real question is not who they were, but what they knew. Because scattered across the earth, we find evidence of knowledge that does not fit the timeline. Not legends, not myths, stone, mathematics, astronomy, engineering. Let's begin with precision. At the Great Pyramid of Giza, the structure is aligned to true north with an accuracy of 0.05 degrees. That level of precision was officially achieved in the modern era using advanced instruments. Yet this structure is over 4,500 years old, or at least that's what we're told. Its base is almost perfectly level, varying by less than 2 centimeters across 230 meters. How? The granite inside the king's chamber was cut and transported from hundreds of miles away. Some of the internal blocks weigh over 70 tons. Even today, moving such stones requires heavy machinery. But in Egypt, we are told they used copper tools and ropes. Does that explanation truly satisfy you? Now consider Pumapunku. The stones there are cut with such precision that they interlock like advanced modular components. Some surfaces appear machine-finished. Drill holes show uniform depth and symmetry, and the site sits over 12,000 feet above sea level. How were multi-ton stones transported there? Why are there no clear signs of primitive shaping? And why does the site show evidence of sudden destruction, as if something violent occurred? Then there is Baalbek. Hidden within its foundation are some of the largest stones ever moved by humans. One block, known as the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, weighs over 1,000 tons. To put that in perspective, modern cranes struggle to lift that weight, and yet it was carved, transported, and positioned with extraordinary precision. Not in a flat desert, but in mountainous terrain. We assume ancient people were primitive, but the engineering says otherwise. Now let's talk about energy. Ancient structures across the world share something unusual. They are often built on fault lines or near underground water systems or aligned with celestial events. At Göbekli Tepe, massive T-shaped pillars form circular enclosures. They're carved with intricate animal reliefs. The site predates agriculture. It predates pottery. It predates metal tools. Officially, it should not exist, and yet it does. Some researchers suggest these sites were not just temples, but knowledge centers, astronomical observatories, calendrical machines built in stone. Now consider this. Across the globe, ancient cultures encoded advanced astronomical knowledge. The Maya tracked Venus with astonishing precision. The Egyptians aligned structures to Orion. Stone circles in Europe track solstices and equinoxes. How did isolated cultures possess such deep understanding of the skies?
And why does this knowledge appear suddenly rather
Look
than
at the
gradually?
uniformity of these angles.
One theory
It can't be
suggests that
natural.
survivors of
The
a
depth reading
pre-flood
confirms it's
civilization
embedded in the
carried
bedrock.
fragments of advanced knowledge.
Look
Not
here.
advanced like
The
computers,
structures are
but
perfectly
advanced in
symmetrical.
understanding natural
This
forces,
cannot be a natural
geometry,
formation.
resonance, stone manipulation, possibly
From
even
this
lost
height,
construction
the
techniques
world
we no
seems
longer
silent.
understand. There
But
are
beneath
ancient
the
legends
shimmering
of sound
surface-
being used to move stone, of knowledge given by watchers, of forbidden sciences. In the Book of Enoch, a text excluded from many modern Bibles, it describes beings who descended and taught humanity metalworking, weapon making, and secret knowledge. Is this symbolic, or a distorted memory of a technological leap? Let's examine something else.
If we
Ancient
rotate it
concrete.
slightly, you
The
can see
Romans
the entry
created a
point more
form of
clearly.
concrete that
Yes, the
grows
fractal
stronger
pattern
over time,
repeats exactly
especially
as the model
exposed to
predicted.
seawater. Modern scientists only recently began to understand how it works. Why do some ancient materials outperform modern equivalents? And why were certain techniques lost entirely? History shows something strange. Knowledge disappears. Libraries burn. Empires collapse. Skills vanish. Now imagine a global catastrophe. Tsunamis hundreds of feet high. Continents reshaped. Ash filling the sky. Survivors scattered. In that chaos, advanced knowledge would not be preserved in full. Only fragments, stories, symbols, blueprints encoded in myth. And when those survivors rebuilt, they would rebuild with what they remembered. Not everything, just enough. That could explain why early post-flood civilizations appear suddenly sophisticated. Sumer emerges with writing. Egypt emerges with monumental architecture. The Indus Valley appears with advanced urban planning, drainage systems, grid layouts, standardized bricks. This is not the slow crawl of primitive development. This looks like reconstruction. Now consider something even more controversial. Some researchers propose that before the Younger Dryas event, around 12,800 years ago, sea levels were far lower. Entire coastal plains would have been exposed. And where do civilizations naturally form? Near water, near coasts. If a technologically sophisticated civilization existed before the flood, we would never see it because it lies underwater. And underwater archaeology is still in its infancy. We have explored more of the surface of Mars than we have of our own ocean floors. Let that sink in. If a technologically sophisticated civilization existed before the flood, it would not need skyscrapers, it would not need electricity. It would need mastery of materials, of astronomy, of geometry, of energy from nature. And the megalithic structures scattered across the planet suggest exactly that. Not fantasy, not science fiction, but an uncomfortable possibility that we are not the first advanced society on Earth. Perhaps not even the most advanced. In the final part, we will examine the catastrophe itself. What could have caused it? Was it gradual or sudden?